Hey everyone, today we're taking a closer look at a pretty cheap 1440p 180Hz 27-inch FreeSync monitor, the Titanarmy P27GR for laptops, desktop PCs or gaming consoles, that right now costs around $180 if you're getting it directly from Titanarmy's website, while it's a bit more expensive over Amazon. And I want to point out that the mentioned FreeSync capability is actually quite hidden on their website, so don't worry, it's there, you just really have to search for it. But I told them about that and they said they will fix it and display it more prominently. And full disclosure, Titanarmy did send me this monitor, but they didn't pay for the review and had absolutely no influence on the content and didn't see it before you did. Now, this monitor comes with two HDMI 2.0 and two DisplayPort 1.4 ports and an audio jack, but no USB hub of any kind. Unfortunately, the ports are all positioned facing downwards, and to plug in the cables you'll either have to crawl under the monitor or kind of flip it over if you enjoy fumbling with cables as little as I do. It also offers a VESA 100mm mount to use it with your own monitor arm or stand. The monitor, including the stand, weighs a total of 3,678 grams and 3,178 without, so the stand is pretty much exactly 500 grams. Actually, considering its size, it feels very light overall. The used material is kind of standard matte black plastic, and the included monitor stand is quite quick to assemble without any issues. And there's also this DisplayPort cable included with a length of 1.5 meters in the box, as well as a small manual and of course the power supply, which is pretty small overall. When turned off, the bezels of this P27GR seem thin, but when you actually turn it on, you can see that the display is not using all the space at the edges. And also let's have a look at the rest of the specs of the Titanarmy P27GR. So, as the name suggests, it's a 27-inch monitor with an IPS panel with good viewing angles, and the resolution is 1440p aka WQHD with the classic aspect ratio of 16:9. It offers a refresh rate of up to 180 Hz via DisplayPort, while for HDMI it maxes out at 144 Hz, so keep that in mind. It has a very good response time of only 1 millisecond gray to gray, and please don't mix that up with input latency. Response time is the time it takes for a single pixel to change its state, and in that case from one gray shade to another. Meaning, in this case, we won't get a blurry image when things are moving around fast in a game, for example. Considering the actual input latency, we'll talk about that later. Furthermore, I've measured a maximum brightness of 295 nits and a pretty decent color accuracy considering this is a rather cheap gaming laptop. At 120 nits, I've measured 99% for the sRGB, 79% for the NTSC, 84% for the Adobe RGB and 87% for the P3 color space. And I want to point out that the color accuracy was pretty good from the factory, as calibrating it with my Spider X Pro didn't actually adjust the colors almost at all. While the colors in general aren't oversaturated, rather conservative, but they can't be bumped up easily in the menu. So you can adjust the saturation to your liking. Oh, and the screen itself of course has a color depth of 8-bit, as expected in that price range really. And it also offers HDR10 compatibility, which seemed to work fine for me if that is something that you dig. You can also connect it to consoles like the PlayStation 5, etc. and then use it with some kind of fake 4K input, which is then being downsampled to 1440p with a better image quality. I personally consider the OSD over here pretty decent and intuitive with a lot of options to configure the monitor. Like here we can choose to activate FreeSync or HDR, change the color modes, input, contrast, brightness, etc. While it also offers a picture-in-picture mode for two sources, and you can also use two sources side by side next to each other at the same time, though as you can see I had issues actually connecting my laptop over HDMI that way, as I was not able to set the screen to vertical mode without it being turned over by 90 degrees for whatever reason. In the OSD we can also choose some overlays like crosshairs, a timer, or we can show the monitor's live frequency, which is a good way to check if FreeSync or Adaptive Sync is actually working, since then the frequency should fluctuate once you're getting less FPS than the current maximum frequency. Though, I think this overlay is way too big to have it on permanently, which is a bit of a shame since I like doing that on my own G-Sync monitor to always have an FPS counter and make sure G-Sync actually works. So maybe they can fix that with future updates, future versions of the P27GR, or at least offer a smaller variant as an alternative. Also, considering the usage of the OSD, when you're actually using the included stand, it wobbles like a lot when pressing one of these buttons, if you're not doing it super carefully or fixating the monitor with your thumb's fingernails at the bezels for more stability. I did not have that issue when I used my own monitor arm. Oh, and I also want to mention that there's a light indicator down here when the monitor is turned on. By the way, booting the P27GR until you can actually see an image takes around 13 to 14 seconds, which is quite long compared to most other monitors. Not a deal breaker like at all, but I just wanted to let you know, and there it is. The monitor does not have any speakers. You'll need external speakers or headphones via the audio jack if you want to use the monitor for sound. The power draw depends on the frequency, the brightness, and is between 35 watt for regular use and up to 54 watt with HDR enabled at the maximum frequency and brightness of 180 Hz. For lower brightness levels, the monitor is actually using DC dimming and not PWM dimming, which means it's flicker-free on lower brightness levels, and that's good and most certainly better compared to most laptop monitors, which usually use PWM instead. I tried my best to measure the real input latency, whereas I don't have a mouse click indicator. Using Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p, low settings, and in this case around 135 FPS, and a resulting latency of 7 milliseconds via the engine, I think I measured around 25 milliseconds total input lag when shooting a gun. Again, take this with a grain of salt because I cannot measure that very accurate. Here we have to add the latency of the mouse, the game and the PC itself. But when I used movement only to show the input lag, it actually seemed super instant, like in only 7 to 8 milliseconds in total for the whole system. Just look at the footage here. And this was recorded with 240 FPS, by the way. And it really felt super responsive to me. It does have some backlight bleeding, which looks extreme in this image, though when actually using it, I did not notice any of that at all. And in this footage, I think it's barely noticeable. I also want to quickly talk about the Freesync functionality. That worked okay overall. If you don't know what it does, let me just briefly explain. It synchronizes your monitor's frequency with your game's FPS in real time, and that way the so-called screen tearing gets eliminated, leading to a much smoother image and a much better gaming experience. My RTX cards recognized it easily and it was addressable as G-Sync in the NVIDIA options, but it did not work with one of the tested laptops when it was connected via HDMI only. So you might need a USB-C port with a DisplayPort support in some cases. Though I've noticed that it did not work perfect when I tested it with games in windowed mode. I mean, it still was a lot better than without, but I had the impression that way it didn't completely eliminate the tearing in that case. I don't know, but absolutely no issue in full screen mode, as you can see in this footage here. And I also have to point out that my review sample came with one dead pixel close to the upper border around here, which is A, within industry standards, and B, I didn't notice it during use like at all, but I want to mention it was there. Usually if a screen has more than 3 dead pixels, you can request a screen replacement. So overall, considering the price, I think we are getting quite a lot here, despite the downsides like missing USB hub, the wobbly included stand. Oh, and while we're talking about the stand, I forgot to show you that the only way you can actually move the monitor on the stand is a little bit from front to back. You cannot tilt it like that and you cannot adjust the height of the monitor. Okay, so except for the, well, not so very good stand and the dead pixel, but I think for $179 or 170 euros, it's a decent option for a 27-inch 140p 180 Hz gaming monitor, all things considered. Just like 5 years ago or so, a similar monitor would have cost easily around $500 for sure. Did I enjoy using it? Would I actually use it myself? Yes, to both, definitely, as I'm using a very similar monitor on my own right now. If you'd like to try out the Titanarmy P27GR yourself, You can use the code Hubwood with the link in the description to get a discount of $10 on your order. And that's all for today. If you like the content, consider liking the video or even subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Also, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye and cheers.